Okay, today in this video, I'm going to show you how I print my stoves on my F570 using my Silhouette Studio program. I have the business edition as well. Okay, as you see, I already have my stoves here. This right here is just what I use when I'm making sure that I'm putting my images in the right place. This is for a 60-inch stove, and for a 60-inch stove, they usually range at 32 inches in length, and I usually do mine at 5.2 in width. But right here is where I duplicated the stoves based off my actual stove measurements. So if you look here, I have two pieces. I have a orange. Let me make it where you can see it. And I have this red. All right. So my red is the size of the top part of the stove. Most of the stove from probably here up is, or somewhere within this area, is this size, which is the stove that I purchased. It's around 4.2 in width. I still did the 32 height, but I did a 4.2 in width. Then, in some areas around the bottom of the stove range from 4.5. So I did my orange in 4.5, and it's still at a 32 length. And so right here, you see I have a line, which is a line that I created based off of putting the actual stove around my neck. And I noticed maybe around 9 to 10 inches from the top of the stove at the center of your neck, back of your neck, around to the front, you would want to place your images around 10, maybe 9 to 10 inches away from that seam line that's at the back of your neck. So I created me a line that's around 10 inches. Mine is at 10 inches. And I start placing my images below or right at that point. As you can see here, I try to stay somewhat around that 10-inch length from the top down. And that's where I start placing my designs, as you can see. But what I do is I place both of these on top of each other and center them. And I make them transparent so I can see. And then I just place it over my stove and I center it on top of the stove. And I make sure it's in the front so I can see. So we're gonna bring them to the front. So as you can see, it's in the front of my green stove. And sometimes you may have to adjust it to align it to where you think your center is, because sometimes it doesn't put it quite in the center with the weird shape of these stoves. So I kind of look at the bottom triangle and try to line it to where I think the middle is, which will probably be like somewhere like that. But I just try to make sure that my designs stay within the stoves, the transparent stoves that I made. I try to make sure that the design stays within inside of that area. Now, as far as my background pieces, like those paint splatters, that's fine. It can go outside of that area because that is your extra bleed area to make sure that you get full coverage on your stove. So that's fine for it to go outside of that area because you don't want any white still showing on your stove. But you do want to make sure that your full design shows within the actual size of the stole, but I did the green stole at 5.2, which gave me the overhang. Now to print my stole on my F570, because I have a 24-inch wide printer, I do not use my 24-inch paper for printing the 60-inch stoles. I use my 17-inch rolls. And on my 17-inch rolls, what I do is to print, I go to my page setup over here on the right, and I change my page settings. I turn my Cameo off because I'm not using my Cameo. Wait a minute, it's changing the wrong thing. We'll change that back. So I turn my Cameo off, then I go to my media size and I type in my media size. So we're gonna start with a 17. I'm using my 17-inch roll, so I want my width to be 17. Well, we gotta change this to custom first. So change your media size to custom. And I mostly use my 24-inch roll, that's why it popped up. But we're gonna change the custom size width to 17. So we're gonna change that to 17. And then we're gonna change the width. We'll say since the sole is 32, we'll go to 35. We have it on portrait mode. You wanna turn off your grid. You don't need the grid. You don't need registration marks. So once I change my page setup, you see that my page has gotten longer. So I grab my stoles and then I center them. Well, you don't want to center them because it will stack the stoles on top of each other. But I will take it to the center of the page by selecting my center to page. And then sometimes I just align them to make sure that they're at the same height. And then I will take them up to the top of the page as far as I can without going into the outer print area. So I have them at the top of the page. You can also make them a little bit closer if you want, but you do want to leave space to cut in between. You can also take them to more to the left if you want to add something on the side of them, but you just want to stay within your print area. Okay, as you can see down here, I do have a little room left. If you want to, you can go back up here to your page setup and you can make the page shorter if you want to. So we're gonna try 33. And yeah, I'm trying to do this video with one hand because I don't have my phone stand with me to record this. So I'm using one hand to type and one hand to hold the phone. So if it's a little shaky, I apologize. All right, so now you see I got it at 33. So this time I did 17 width and 33 height. And we're still on portrait mode. But as you can see now, my stole is still within the page. And I do have a little room left at the bottom. So now to print, I will go over here and I will go to my print page setup. I notice when I do this, it prints with no problem. Before I used to not go to my print page setup. I used to have issues with it printing incorrectly. It will do it automatically. If you go to your print preferences, you sometimes necessarily don't have to go to the print page setup. But I just always do my print page setup beforehand just to be on the safe side. But I will go to my print page setup. Well, let me take that back. Let me show you in case you don't already have it saved. So So let's rewind. I will go to my print first. All right, as you can see here, it shows your stole cut off. And that's because as you go to your print page setup, you will see that it's not set up to the correct size that you need to print. So it's gonna show a different size, which mine was on 8.5 by 11 on my print page setup. So you wanna click print. It's not gonna print anything, but you wanna click print. You wanna make sure that your printer is selected because I have multiple printers, so I have to make sure that my F570 is selected. Then I go to preferences. Once I go to preferences, I go to custom paper size. And then I always create my usernames or paper names because I may use it more than once. So you will want to change this to whatever you want to save the name as. And then you will go here and change the paper size and height, the width and height, to match what you have for your stole or your image to be printed, which was what we set on the silhouette page setup, which was 17 by 33. You will put that here. Since I already have one saved, I'm not gonna do it again. I think I have one saved. Yes, I do. So I have a stole saved, and I saved mine at 17 by 33. And then once you put the name up here and your sizes, as you see, I have my sizes, which you have to hit the tab button, not the enter button, but you have to hit the tab button to go to the next one. And then you will have to hit save. Once you hit save, it will show what you selected here, which will be the stole. Then you will have to come here and select that same name that you just saved, which mine is down here. So I will select that, make sure it's on portrait mode because we're not doing landscape, and as you can see that it did change. So you want to make sure both of these match. So I have my stole at 17 by 33. I have the document size at 17 by 33. So that's your output and your document size, which match what I put on silhouette. I always go to my advanced and I do save paper roll. My layout, I always make sure that it's on mirror image. And I also check to make sure that my print preview is always on because you do not want to print something that is not sized correctly. You'll be wasting paper and ink. Also, sometimes I do high quality print and I just select high quality print. I turn the simple setting off and I just put it on high quality. But then I would hit OK and it would take me back here to this screen. I will click apply and then I will exit. Do not click print, exit. And I hit cancel. Then I will go back to my file. Then I will go to my print page setup because you remember when we clicked print, the document was in an 8.5 by 11. It was not showing the full stole. So now I go to my print page setup and I make sure that this is on the stole that I created. So if you click your drop down box, you will find the stole that you just created, the size, which is the 17 by 33, which is here. You will want to select it and make sure it's on portrait, hit OK. Then I will come over here to my silhouette media size and I will stroll to the bottom down here and I will select printer because that's what I want my printer to print that at, 17 by 33. You want to make sure everything matches, and as you see, it changed that to printer instead of custom, but it still matches my 17 by 33. So now we will go back to file and print. Sometimes I have to wait on silhouette to load. I think that has to do with maybe your memory on your computer, or either that the images have a lot of small pieces. I'm not quite sure. I'm still trying to figure that out. Sometimes I will save my images into a PDF or a PNG or JPEG and bring it back in, but this time I did not. So it does have a lot of small pieces on that design. I just grouped them together to make sure that they don't move. But now, as you can see, we're back to the print preview and we're gonna shrink it out to check that our image is on here. And as you can see, now we have our full stole. So then you will go to print. I always double check because sometimes things could go back to what you didn't have it at. So I just click back on preference and I check to make sure that those document size and output size still match, and which they do. Is still on high quality print. So I know nothing didn't change. I hit OK. And then now you can hit print and your stole should print. I'm not where my printer is located, so it may not reach my printer because I'm so far away. And sometimes I have to hit connect my USB cord to my printer because I do have Wi-Fi in my home, but the strength of the Wi-Fi is not a good strength for that printer. So I normally have to connect my USB cord to my printer to keep it printing well, because if not, it will stop in the middle of my print and cancel my print job, or it will spool for a long time. So to avoid the spooling and the canceling print jobs, I just connect my USB because I don't have time to be wasting time waiting on something to print or wasting my paper and ink. And now as you see, it's starting to load. But I actually think that it may be the stole because I did not save the image as a JPEG and bring it back in, because when you have a lot of small pieces on the design, it does take a long time for it to calibrate or read all of those small items. So normally I would save it as a JPEG and bring it back in. That way Silhouette only reads it as one full design. It doesn't read all of those small little pieces. So when I do bring it back in as a JPEG, I do have to trace out the background because it will bring it back in with a white background or whatever color your paper size setup background is. So I have to remove that, and then I could go back to my printing and set it up as if I was printing it like I just did. All right, so as you can see, it sent it to the printer because it disappeared. It went to the 100%. And now we're just waiting on my Epson print view to show up down here, which it will pop up in a minute. I've also had times where it sent it to Epson like this and my Silhouette will crash. All I do is reopen Silhouette and I go to my recovered documents and I pull it back up, and it should be back in the same format that you left it in. And I just go back and redo my print setup. But as you can see, now that we have the stole here on my Epson print preview, you want to make sure that it's set up the way that you had it set up to print. Mine always print in the reverse upside down setting. I never changed it. I just always make sure that it's mirrored and that it is the correct size that I want it to print. We can see that it is mirrored, and it's the save paper roll is on because I don't have any extra white left. And then you would just click print, and it will click print up here, and it will start printing. If you do see any errors that you would not want to print this, cancel your print if you see any errors. But if not, just click print and you should start seeing your image print out of your Epson F570. I'm just going to cancel mine because I already printed this job and I don't want to print it again.